Hello and welcome to another edition of Sun Dragon Tips and Tricks. I'm Rebecca. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in downtown Brevard, North Carolina. And I'm coming to you from my house today. I figured it's been a little while since I've done a sweater basics video where we're just really talking through some stuff with my whiteboard pictures. There's always new things I could be covering here, but sometimes once I've gone over some of the basics, it's hard to find new things to talk about. But I don't know everything about all types of sweaters, but part of the point of this series of videos is so when you read through a pattern and you're going, what is going on here? Some of these pictures might help you understand where you're headed. I'm a huge fan of knitting top-down sweaters. Like this one is a top-down sweater. There are a lot of patterns out there that are also bottom up. So when I'm talking about top down, like this one, you're starting to knit at the collar and you're going down towards the cuff, down towards the hem. There are also patterns where they go bottom up, and some might go, if you really like top down, you're like, why do bottom up? There are a couple different reasons. Sometimes starting from the bottom where there isn't as much shaping is easier or can be more approachable. Sometimes it's good to know where you're headed though when you're doing this. So we are currently heading towards the last month of our spring make along, which is on the pressed flowers pattern. This is the cardigan and it's bottom up. So I'm going to fold this over here so I can try to show you before we move to the whiteboards. This started at the cuff down here, at the hem, I should say. It's the cuff for the sleeves, hem for the body down here, and I'm knitting upwards. I have finished the front panels. It kind of divides at the sleeves, and I'm going to try to draw some pictures. We're going to see if we can do some animation as we go, some drawings as we go to kind of show. Bottom hem. The fronts have gone all the way up to the shoulders, and I've done both sides. It's really hard to hold it up and have you see that. And now it's time to go back and do the back side. Then there will be a hole right here where the sleeve would go, and I'm going to pick up stitches and knit down. So I am going to go over in pictures a couple of different ways that bottom up sweaters can function. So when you see the pattern, you might have some sense of what the final goal is. It'll kind of help you process and make the pattern. So let's get to it. I'm going to go over some methods, some instructions that you might see in the pattern, or just some pictures to help you process what's happening if you are doing a bottom-up sweater. And most of these instructions will be for knit patterns. Most of these will be for knit patterns. There may be some similar structures for crochet patterns as well. I think I said at the beginning of this video, I am a huge fan of top-down. And one of the reasons I like that is you can try it on as you go. And it's a little harder to do that with a bottom up. That's what I have in the con category here. It can be harder to try on to make sure it's fitting. But a pro is sometimes you're starting with the largest part of knitting to get it out of the way, or you're starting with the bottom, it's a big circle, or it's a big straight line. And so it's easier, like you're not trying to figure out and navigate increases right off the bat. You're not trying to figure out like weird shaping up by the shoulders right off the bat. There are a lot of different varieties of different patterns. The two that I've come across most recently with my experience with bottom-up sweaters, and I know if you're watching this, you might say, well, I have a lot more to add to this. That's great. But the two main styles are really based on different shoulders. They're still starting from the bottom up, but they're based on different shoulder types. I'm going to go over drawing them and go through them with you. One is when you make the sleeves as well as the body and then attach them together. And that will give you raglan seams, which are diagonal. And the other one, which is what my pressed flowers is where you do the entire body and then you pick up the sleeves later, or you sew them in later completely. And so they're knit in a different way than the ones in the first one will be. And that will often give you a drop shoulder where so the first one I had up here where the sleeves come out and come down have raglan seams. You know, it looks kind of funny. Drop shoulder is where it goes over your shoulder quite a bit. And then the sleeves come out straight instead of coming at a diagonal right from the collar. I know those look a little funny, but let's look at that first style. The raglan seam shoulder is when you make the sleeves separately. And then you join the body to the sleeves all together right at sleeve separation. When I say sleeve separation, I'm talking about if you're going top down, it's where you separate off the sleeves. Going bottom up, you join the body and the sleeves right about where the armholes would join, the armpit, we could call it. And you keep knitting up. So to do this, I'm going to do drawings that are based on cardigans because that is what I have been doing the most bottom up. I don't know if that's everyone's experience. I'm sure there are pullovers that are also bottom up. But if we think about, I'm going to give myself space for the body here. Often you will go ahead and knit the sleeves first. So you will cast on and knit the cuff. And then depending on the style, there might be slight increases. I have a whole nother video on sleeves, but you will knit up. This is the direction of our knitting. And often what they'll have you do, and it may seem weird at first, but I'm going to try to show you how this all fits together. When you get up to the right length, and it may be a lot shorter than you're expecting your sleeves to be, but that's because there's a lot more knitting that has to happen. So they will have you towards the top of a certain length of sleeve. They will have you bind off a certain number of sleeves. This is a bind off. And then they will have you put the rest of your sleeve stitches, which will go in a circle. This is my best trying to show that. They will have you put that on a stitch holder. They will have you put your stitches on a scrap piece of yarn, or we love using barber cords for this. And then they'll have you go over and do the same thing again. You'll cast on your cuff. You'll do the sleeves. You'll make 2 of them. And the same thing. And I'm going to flip it so the bind off, you can make 2 identical sleeves here. And that will work just fine. But the bind off, I'm going to put it in on this side. I'm going to call it BO over here for bind off. And then the rest of the sleeves stitches all the way around will go on another holder. We don't want to bind them off. We want live stitches. It'll make for a more seamless sweater later. Then we're going to come to the body. And the same thing, let me put in my cuff here. We're going to cast on. And for a cardigan, it'll be a big flat piece, but I'm going to try to show it in 3 dimensions here. And then you're also going to knit to whatever length. I have made the sleeves just as long as the torso, but that is not always the case. You're going to knit up until you have the length the pattern says. And maybe this has a cuff too. So let's put that on. I keep calling it a cuff. On the body, we'd probably call it the hem. It depends on the pattern. At a certain point in the pattern, they may have you do this row first. They may have you come across on a right side or a wrong side row. It might be a wrong side row where they have you knit across a certain number of stitches. And then they have you also do a bind off where the sleeve is going to set in, where your armhole, your armpit is going to be. And then they have you knit across the back of your sweater. And then they're going to have you bind off. You might say, this is really weird. Why do I need to bind this off? It will make sense later. Here's another bind off. And then they'll have you knit across the remaining stitches. Now on the next row, it's the time to join it all together. So we started with knitting the sleeves, and then we knit the torso. Now it's time to join them all together. And to do that, we're going to knit. We're going to knit across the front. And then the second thing we're going to do is knit around the arm. All of this is with the right side facing. And then the third thing to do at this point is to knit across the back. The fourth thing is, and this is where those little bind off spots can help you know where to start and stop. We're going to knit around this sleeve. And then the fifth thing is we're going to knit the rest of the front. It's going to join everything all together. And then the work continues. I'm going to put it over here, and I might do a second picture over here of what it's going to look like. We're going to knit the shoulders to the neck. So once these are joined together, you still have gaps right in here. We now have everything on. Let me see if I can draw this in. We still have little gaps right in here. This is sometimes for me the hardest part of continuing to knit. We have this is our gap right in here. This is all on one circular. And we still are going back and forth. But now we're going to do decreases. And the decreases are what's going to lead to diagonal seams as this keeps going up and the shoulders get shaped in. Those diagonal seams are what's going to pull the shoulders in. So eventually we have the collar up here. You think about I'll put in a dotted line here for when we joined everything together. Because what is going to be visible, we'll have raglan seams across the back. I have other videos that talk about how raglan seams work with spots from where the sleeves join in the front and the back, diagonal seams that go all the way up to the collar. But that will have it continue to decrease. We'll have three separate parts that once they get joined in here, And then we might even have a collar up here, right? If you like ribbing, that's where all the ribbing goes. But that's how we get the final product. 3 pieces joined together, and then we keep going up. And that gives you, that works best with raglan seam. It doesn't have to, but it often works best when we do that. Let's look at one of the other ways that this can happen, because it's very different what's happening with the pressed flowers sweater that I'm working right now. So let's talk about a drop shoulder sweater. This one can be even easier to do because there's a lot less shaping. However, not everyone might like the fit. So what happens with a drop shoulder one where we're not making the sleeves separately? Part A of this is knitting the torso. It's one piece up to your underarm. So let's take that same idea of a cardigan. This is what I did with my pressed flowers. And I went up. Again, the knitting direction is bottom up. I went up to where the underarms should be. And all of this can be done in one piece. Here's our cuff for the bottom. All of this is done in one piece. Now, to continue knitting it upwards, we're going to knit in sections. So part B, you're going to knit those separately. So what I have done with my pressed flowers is we have had 3 chunks that I've done it in. And there'll be little separations right here and right here. And what that does is it gives us 3 different chunks. We have the right front, the back, let's make this a little clearer. We have the right front, we have the whole back, and then we have the left front. So first, we're going to knit, and there might be some shoulder shaping, but for the most part, this can go straight up. Knit the front, knit the back. I'm going to try to show where these overlap. We have one piece that comes all the way across the back, and then knit the other side in the front. They are done in chunks that will then get attached. We want to really try to think about how this comes together. This comes all the way up to the same height, and then these will be seamed together. What it will do if we do all 3 of those sections, so let's label them out here. What that will look like when it's done is we will have openings on either side. So let's try drawing that over here. I'm going to give it some space so we can get the sleeves in. One thing about the pressed cardigan, the pressed flowers cardigan, is it has a little bit of a V-neck shaping, and that is in the instructions. If we just kept knitting all the way up, straight up, without dividing for the front and the back, we wouldn't have a place to put in the armholes. So when you're done with part B of knitting the front and back separately, and then you do seam it together up here, you will have basically a vest. I know of at least one person who has turned this pattern into a vest. What the next step will be is picking up stitches around the armhole. So that will be in here. And then you knit the arm. Knit the sleeve. So while the torso was knit in this direction, the sleeve is knit in that direction. And then you repeat. On the other side. And this one is knit in that direction. And then there's any finishing work that you need to do, like putting on, for a cardigan, you might put on a button band. That might be added on later. That's how the pressed flowers is going to go. Now, some sleeves, some versions of this may have you knit the sleeve and then just sew it on there. I think a lot of people prefer this because you don't have to sew things together. You can just pick up and go. And I have videos on how to pick up stitches and all those kinds of things. And some of them I might do refreshers on, so they are more up to date and they might get more of your views, and maybe be a little easier to find. So I hope that video with just some pictures and kind of showing you how things work is helpful if you're going to be tackling a bottom-up sweater. Like I said, those are the two methods I've come across most frequently. I know there's more versions than, days in the week kind of a thing. There's a lot more versions of all kinds of different patterns, but that was more of a breakdown of the bottom-up patterns I am more familiar with. If you have an idea for what you'd like me to make a video on, let me know. I make the videos on things that I feel comfortable communicating about. If it's something that's in my wheelhouse, is something I know a lot about, I will try to make a video for it. If it's something I don't know about, I'll let you know. I'll let you know if I can learn about it to show it to you. Right now, and this is in late May, early June, I am also putting out a survey to see if there are ways that we can interact with the community beyond videos, especially when you're far away. Virtual events, these are things that would be open to people who have memberships, people who have monthly subscriptions with us. We are working to develop these ideas. If you'd like some input into that, I will put the Google form link into the description of this video. We're looking into ways that you can ask me questions or work with me. But those are going to have to fit around the schedule of the shop that we already have in place. This is not my only job right now. I'm also running a yarn shop. So I wish I could do it all. I'd need to clone myself to do that. Anyway, let me know what you think of this. Let me know if you have other questions or if there are further videos I can develop on this theme. And as I always like to say, may your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Is it a sleepy day? Apparently it's a sleepy day. Awesome.